Hello everyone, and welcome to TLDR Addiction. On episode 4 today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. So trauma is something that we see paired very often with addictive disorders because avoidance is actually part of the pathology of PTSD and trauma. And getting intoxicated, high, drunk are really great ways to numb out, to avoid whatever it is that otherwise would be triggering you. So essentially, when you're dealing with traumatic memories and stress, what happens is anytime you come into contact with either an external or internal stimuli that reminds you of what happened. So external could be like a person, place, or thing, to use a triggering terminology, or internal can be an emotional state. It could be a feeling, it could be a thought or a memory. But whenever you come into contact with those things, it cues your body to essentially go into like a fight or flight mode where you have this really intense physiological reaction and you also have a lot of very distressing thoughts. It's very uncomfortable. And something that as part of the traumatic reaction people tend to try to avoid. And so one way to avoid that, an easy way, it's a seemingly easy way, is to use substances because it provides that immediate relief. The problem, of course, is that it's not actually a solution over time because you develop a dependency on it, a tolerance on it, and then it leads you to have even more problems than when you started. So the question then is, say you are working with someone who has both trauma and a substance use disorder, or you know someone who has trauma and a substance use disorder. What do you do? Because it can be very, very threatening for them to think about letting go of their substance because that is perhaps the only way that they've been able to find, potentially for years and years and years, to find relief and to find peace. And the idea of giving that up, extremely difficult. So the key to this actually is relating back to episode 1, this biopsychosocial model. You have to attend to both parts here. You have to attend to the trauma and the addiction at the same time. Because if you just take the substance away, and that was the primary way that person was coping with the distress of the traumatic response, then it's going to be very overwhelming for them, and they'll likely just find their way back to either that substance or another one because that avoidance mechanism is too strong. So the way that you do that, it's tricky because the best treatments that we have right now for PTSD all take a while, usually somewhere in the vicinity of 3 months. And that's longer than most treatment programs for addiction will have someone as part of their program. Outpatient programs and inpatient ones, residential ones, generally run around the 4 to 6 week range. So getting someone hooked in with a therapist, if they are in an outpatient program, is critical. And that therapist ideally is doing one of the 3 evidence-based treatments for PTSD, and that's cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, or EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So you get someone hooked in with that. If it's a residential facility or you can't find someone who you can work with on that outpatient, the best thing you can do is help someone understand the connection between their substance use and their coping with these conditions so that they can see what's going on there and then start to work in some basic traumatic treatment principles, which we don't have time to get into on this particular episode, although I could do one on that in the future. But basically just help them put a foot into the water so that they can see, oh, maybe these treatments have merit and maybe my symptoms can get a lot better. So that by the time they leave, they are interested and open to the idea of change and working with their traumatic response to get to a better place. So thank you guys for joining me for another episode of TLDR Addiction. I look forward to talking to you all again soon.